Topic number two. These another one of these politics. A lot of these political topics that has to do with countries is the U.S., Russia, and Turkey. Now, Joe Biden met with Vladimir Putin and the convention in Geneva where they sat down and spoke. And there's a lot of interesting news that, it was supposed to last 5 hours, but only lasted 4 hours. There were supposedly scuffles between U.S. and Russian media at the gates. But besides all that, stuff that you might see, Putin said the talks were productive. There was no hostility. And Biden called the two great powers. These two know each other. They've met before. They have experience with each other. As far as I could tell from what I was reading, that they seem to get along pretty well, and that Putin kind of prefers this relationship because it's something more predictable and stable. But I don't know if that means like, oh, it's easier to control or easier to kind of manipulate and get over on. I don't think that's the case. They had a lot of things to talk about. They were discussing cybersecurity, arms control, the Ukraine, and the fate of the jailed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. And they did stalled nuclear talks and returned all their ambassadors. So was I think about a month or two ago, was it? Russia said, all right, after Biden has come out and said, yeah, Putin is definitely a killer. Putin was like, all right, we're pulling all the ambassadors back. All the U.S. ambassadors like, maybe you should go home and get some new orders. So they're definitely, this is a sign that the relationship of the countries is definitely improving, or at least taking a step in the opposite direction. And then apparently Biden also told Putin that there's certain critical infrastructure that should be off limits for attack when it comes to cyber attacks. Because I don't think there's really any question, at least on the United States side, that there have been attacks from either the Russian government or groups that are sponsored by the Russian government, or at least that are acting on Russian soil and not being prosecuted. So he gave him 16 specific entities from energy to water systems. So we'll see what that does. But it's at least Joe Biden coming out and saying, like, hey, you should know about this. This is what's going on. So overall, the talks were pretty productive. And the most concrete action was to begin nuclear talks to basically help the limited control of the two nuclear powers. So compromise, as well as putting the ambassadors back. So definitely a step back in the right direction there. And then the second one was Belarus, a possible pressure point for Russia versus NATO. And the president of Lithuania says that to swallow Belarus was an old idea in Russia. So I just came about this article, and I just thought it was interesting because it could be a way for Russia to kind of try to say, listen, we want to do things and you'll let us do things or release certain sanctions, else, we will mount troops on a border and we will kind of try to absorb this country. So I think the same thing happened. That's what happened with I believe, the Ukraine as well, right? One of them countries were absorbed into Russia, that he mounted an offensive and took that land. That's why he had major sanctions slapped against him and Russia. So it's definitely not unprecedented. And that's just an idea. There's no guarantee that anything's going to happen. I just thought it was an interesting idea, an interesting kind of view of this strategy on the ground. Then the third major one is the Turkish missile defense deal. So the Turkish president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, I know Erdogan, but I don't know how to say the first names very well. But he gave no indication on Monday that the deal with Moscow for the S-400 missile systems would be reversed. And this is a mobile surface-to-air missile system the deal was worth about $2.5 billion. This was back in 2017. Delivery was accepted in 2019. 4 missile batteries in total. And the reason the United States has come out and said that this technology should not be operationalized. Why? Because it is very advanced. It can handle multiple targets simultaneously, and also apparently poses a significant challenge to the F-35's weapons development program, which is the most expensive platform that we have, the F-35 fighter jets. So, and of course, there's the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Acts, or CAATSA, CATSA. Under this act, any foreign government working with the Russian defense sector finds itself in the crosshairs of U.S. economic sanctions. So when Turkey did this, they were sanctioned very heavily, and Turkey was a NATO ally. So it was a kind of point of pressure there. But they haven't reversed it, and apparently they have started testing, and as of October, on the Black Sea coast over there in Turkey. So thought that was just very interesting. Not to say there's any real reason, but these are just always things to know about, is when power is sitting in certain regions of the world, when leaders are conversing, when deals are being made, especially large deals, especially when it comes to military power, strength. It just, these are things that build up in the future and may influence policy decisions, may influence politicians and who is trying to run, what platforms are trying to run on, and what initiatives may try to be funded, right? What we may be trying to spend money on in the future if we need to, plan some way to deal with a problem that results from these kinds of things. So those are the big things interesting there for U.S., Russia, and Turkey there. Yeah.
I mean, world news is always great to know. It's way better than knowing what the Kardashians are doing. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely. I think I just know the basics, like what happened, what's going on, what are the gist. Regardless of your opinion, an argument on either side, you should just know objectively these events are occurring. There's some noise happening over there. There's some noise happening over there. Because if you don't, you're unaware of a lot of the world.
I feel like anytime like Russia's been involved, and I might be honest, Russia I feel like has been a little quiet. I don't feel like Russia's been making as much noise, or as a world power, making as much noise as it should be, and I kind of feel like it's been keeping to themselves. As for Turkey, Turkey's definitely been a hot item in the news, where I feel like everybody's been trying to either take over Turkey, right? Is that a thing?
I'm not 100% sure. There were a bunch of conflicts over there, and
I feel like they're in the news quite often, like at least over the last year or two.
they were for a while, especially from 2017, because they did this. They were sanctioned by the United States, so that might be what you saw. I know there were some issues with Ukraine over there and some other countries.
And
honestly,
honestly,
I'm not recalling it 100% well. So
it's a perfect example of The Art of War, the book The Art of War from Sun Tzu. When your enemy is destroying themselves, why intervene? Just let them destroy themselves. And that's what's been happening in the United States. We have so much turmoil going on.
The Art of War also states that if your allies are in war, to hold back and wait till your allies destroy themselves among themselves in the war, to create yourself a better power stance, to then enter this.
Human beings are all about power and control. So the balance of power has been a quintessential part of development in most of the modern world. So back in the day, before we had nuclear weapons and huge territories, wars were waged all the time. It was commonplace for people to try to take each other's territory. Now it's not quite the same. But I agree that any other country that's an adversary of the United States, or wishes to get a better strategic position against the United States, over the last couple of years, and even now, probably wouldn't want to interfere too much, because we're doing a good job of tearing ourselves in half at the moment, for being on one side or the other of so many issues that exist that are polarizing everybody and keeping us from getting back to the center and actually talking about the issues and figuring out the real solutions, instead of just trying to make your side wins over the other side, which obviously will never work. It never worked in history. It's never working to this day. So, yeah, but that is true.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on in Russia. We don't get a lot of news from there, but
they're a little quiet. I wouldn't be surprised if some big news comes out of there in the coming months.